Hey there, YouTube. A little while ago, I put out a video about my monthly ammo budget or how I work through that. So let's take some comments. Why not? Why not take some comments on the ammo? How frequently do you rebarrel your guns? That's a ton of ammo to me. That I should. Yeah, so I've only changed barrels on pistols a few times, not like hardly any. With rifles, different story. Different story. The rifles don't last as long. I think I've cooked two handgun barrels and like six rifle barrels, maybe. That sounds right to me. It sounds right. I've been wanting to take some classes, but traveling out of state plus an expensive class in ammo is a bit difficult for me. Are Vortex classes and instructors any good? I haven't been to Vortex yet. It's Vortex Edge. I think it's pretty close to Madison. I'm going there with Joel in just a few weeks, actually. So I'll check it out. I've heard the facility's cool. I don't know the instructors. I don't know. We'll find out. Ben, curious about the reloading gear you have set up. Is it fully automated or hand driven? Thank you. So I used to do the auto drive thing, and kind of where I've landed is the hand cranked, what, Dylan 1100 now used to be the 1050, whatever. Like that's what I want, hand cranked, because I can feel everything that I'm doing. It's not really slower to hand crank it instead of use the auto drive. If I'm just loading up a few hundred rounds for some practice, and it just gets rid of the whole auto drive component. Which, if you're like an engineer type person, maybe you find the auto drive fun. I don't get that much value out of it that I even want to dick with it. How do you travel with guns and ammo? You said you're in Canada. Do you borrow a gun while there? I unfortunately live in New York, and I believe you were here not that long ago. Without a New York State pistol permit or LEOSA, how do you do trainings? In New York, you can't even shoot a pistol without a permit or unless you're receiving permit training. Yeah, so let me put it this way. I find ways to navigate the laws in all of these places. Sometimes I travel with equipment, sometimes not. All right, so one person says 50 to 60K a year. I think I said I shoot 50 to 60K a year of the factory 9 mil. I shoot a lot of other stuff, but factory 9 mil I shoot 50 or 60K. Still the 1K per week you shot when you were shooting matches. Nah, I think I shoot more now. Uh, I was told by a very successful fellow shooter and good friend he would buy reloading components $50,000 at a time. He said that particular money was making 1 to 2% in a money market, while loaded ammo and reloading components have been going up 10 to 20% a year. So he wins either way, shooting for the price it will never be again, or sell it and make more money. Yeah, that's how inflation works, I guess. You might as well buy stuff now. I'm in my first full year as a shooter, and I've been a lot more serious about shooting with a pretty steady regimen for the last 5 months. It seems I'm going to be going through about 1,000 rounds every 3 weeks if I consider my training and my wife's training as well. So about 5,000 to 5,500 a year for just 9 millimeter ammo. That sounds right to me. A 45 from time to time as my CCW. My wife carries a 380 in her car, so add another $1,000 a year for that ammo. Yes, that sounds right. Shooting is really not cheap. If you plan on shooting regularly, it's not a cheap thing. It's pretty much like pick a hobby that you want, you know? And then, um, yeah. Here we go. For someone shooting on a fixed budget that is very small, what is the best bang for buck live action drill to make the most out of it? Doubles, bill drills, or something else? I dry fire as much as possible when I want to make my ammo count when I go to the range to practice for USPSA. All right, that's a good question. I think you'll get more out of more complex drills with more targets. Maybe even like a small mock stage, you can get a lot out of. But what the way that I would do that, it was I would go through the whole thing dry, like 5, 6, 7 reps, like very aggressive, very pointed dry fire. Then you do one live rep of whatever the thing is, and then assess it really carefully, paste it all up, and then do a bunch of dry reps again. So it's basically like a combined live and dry session. I think that's pretty good. Next question, Ben. How do you handle the various state laws while traveling? Is Canada hard to get your tools into? Thanks. Um, yeah. So many questions. Yeah, how do you handle the very state laws? Very carefully. I try not to do anything that's going to get me in trouble, is what I do. And last time I went to Canada, I did not bring a firearm because that would be too much of a hassle um, for me. So I just didn't do that. Have you taught or shot alongside tier one mil or LE units that have similar ammo consumption? How do they rate? I'm a mid pack PRS shooter and I was an instructor's aide for a tier two unit being taught by a tier one instructor. Their shooting performance was comparatively low to their civilian counterparts. Uh, there are some places I've been or some units I've shot with that have effectively unlimited ammunition. Um, that's a little bit deceptive to say that when you because if it's a place like that that has a bunch of resources and the ammo flows freely, then really what they're restricted on is time because there's going to be so much stuff that they have to do in terms of training that it's not like they're going to shoot all day. And it's kind of like if a guy's really into shooting on his own time, he can kind of get the ammo and shoot a little bit. Yeah, it's a tough comparison, but there are places where guys shoot, you know, like the average guy maybe shoots 20 or 30,000 rounds a year, and you definitely see it. Like you can see like these guys are definitely better. There's just you can tell. Now that's a lot of ammo per person, but you can definitely see the outcome. I'm sure buying it in 5, 10, or 15K, that's the way to save. And do it again. Eventually, you could stock tens of thousands of rounds on top of what you shoot. Yeah, that's kind of what I do. I don't order like the way to get ammo really cheap. I think you order it in like a pallet. Um, I don't really like ordering that much at a time. Like ordering 10,000 ish at a time is pretty good for me. One guy says, "How? What's the process to get guns and ammo into Canada?" Another one. Like people are very curious about bringing guns to Canada. It's not really that hard, guys, to go to a different country with a gun. It's just you're doing a bunch of paperwork. That's it. Like you, depending on the country or whatever the process is going to be, you just get out in front of it ahead of time, do the paperwork you're supposed to do, and then eventually there'll be this moment that's kind of awkward if you've never done it, where you fly to the country and you show up at customs and you're like, "Yep, I have this gun." And that's kind of awkward the first time you do it. But after a while you get used to it. And all they want, the customs guys will be they want something in their language, like a piece of paper written in their language that says it's okay for you to have the gun. Then they're going to look at the serial number to make sure that matches and you'll go on your way. That typically is the process most countries I've been to with a gun. It's been a lot. It's like it just seems sketchy if you haven't done it, but by the time you go through the process, likely you will show up at the border for that country and you will know more. Like you will know the law for that place better than the customs guy that you initially talked to. He will have to go get his supervisor, probably. Depends on where you go, but that's typically what I've seen. All right. One guy says CCI Blazer about to go out of stock everywhere. Most people buy 115 grain. I stick to 124 grain Blazer. No, I just think Blazer's not like the best. It's very cheap and it's good enough. That's kind of how I look at the Blazer. If I see PMC 9mm ammo, like I consider that better, but it's less available and it's a little bit more money. Okay, stupid question. I haven't been to Canada since I was a kid. Do you have really big classes in Canada, considering that Canada isn't really known as a place having much of a gun culture? I don't think that's true. I think Canada has like old school. They had a lot of guns, or like they had a culture around it. Mostly because they don't have anything like a Second Amendment. They have extremely heavy restrictions. It's pretty much a ban on handguns from Fidel Castro's son, saying people do not have a right to handguns. I know there are a lot of hunters in Canada. I'm talking about handguns for citizens. Or do you mostly teach Canadian Leos? Yeah, you can have classes and you can have shooting in Canada. It's just a lot of rules and it's very restricted. Uh, let's take one more. I went to my first USPSA club match. Very funny and not inviting at all. That's too bad. I mean, it's club to club, man. That's how it goes. Do you recommend just practice on my own until monthly matches or regional larger events? Well, I mean, for me, The matches are a thing to drive the training. Like I like training with the gun. I like improving myself. Uh, Competition shooting, it gives you like an avenue. It's like giving you something to practice for. And if you want to do that, yeah, you should do that. I mean, it won't matter if you don't like the guys at your at your club. Honestly, you just show up and shoot and be nice and fucking leave. Um, that would be that would be the way to do it. Anyway, that's good. Lots of interesting comments lately. And if you have questions or comments about anything, just go ahead and put it down below. I think it's always fun to talk about this stuff.